have seen the torch of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all. So with deep
appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this wonderful land of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we face and that affects so many areas of our lives. And it's really seriously threatening the very foundations of our freedom. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Character and freedom are entirely interdependent. One depends completely upon the other. Our founders knew that if you leave decent people alone, if you don't oppress them with the government that's too intrusive, that tries to micromanage every aspect of their lives, if you leave decent people alone, they will not only thrive and prosper, but they will bring one another along for a great ride to mutual prosperity. And all of it hinges on that solid internal moral compass. Because when you have a lot of freedom and liberty, and people don't have that moral compass, they're likely to do just about anything. And then government is constantly invited to try and impose order through rules, regulations, laws that inevitably restrict freedoms. It all hinges on character. It always has. Free societies can't operate the way they ideally should be able to unless we have people of decent character. And next weekend, we will be celebrating our country's Independence Day, a time when we celebrate the freedoms that we enjoy, and we celebrate the blessings of our country. And I hope that in next week's program, which I'm going to dedicate to the premise that freedom depends on character, I hope that you'll be tuning in, because the song that you hear playing at the beginning and at the end of every program will be played in its entirety, perhaps several times during the hour, as we truly celebrate our independence and the freedoms that we enjoy. If ever there were a time when character mattered so much, it is now. It is today. In our very delicately balanced and tenuous world, our world on the brink in so many respects. We've made a lot of technological advances, but we haven't made enough advances in the way we treat one another, in the way we conduct our affairs. We've not been true to our creed, and it has come to bite us big time and taking its toll. And so next week, I hope you'll tune in. It may or may not be a live program, as also may be the case the week following, as I'll be on tour, and I will also not be returning at the same time to my home base that I usually do when I am on tour. So there may be 2 weeks in a row here that you may be treated to a best of program. But next week, if it is a pre-recorded program, it will be a special program devoted to this country and the freedoms we enjoy and its interdependence on freedom. And I'll be talking about the inspiration for the song that you hear that opens and closes this program, America, My Home. The inspiration for it, its meaning for me and for my wife when we composed it, and the meaning we hope that it conveys to those that hear it and are touched by it. To those of you who this past week sent me requests to join the chorus of performers carrying the song's message, I thank you very much. I got 2 requests just this past week for folks who wanted to perform the song for their patriotic celebrations next weekend, and I couldn't be happier. I hope to get more requests as the holiday rolls upon us. And as I said before, this interdependence of freedom and character is very serious business. It's what I've dedicated my whole professional career to addressing. I love this country. I love the principles that it stands for. And I love the concept of maximum freedom for human beings. But I also know that where there is freedom, where there is liberty, there must be responsibility. And that demands character. And I also know that we're in a crisis of character, the likes of which we haven't seen for many years. And it's threatening the very fabric of our society. It threatens our homes, especially, our intimate relations, our marriages, our families, our communities. It threatens our whole country. It threatens our finances, our overall economy. Everything is affected by the character issue, whether we like it or not. Everything is affected. And so I've made it my personal mission over the last several years to write about it, to speak about it, to carry the message in song and in person, as I'm doing tonight on this program. And I do so on my blogs at manipulative-people.com. That's www.manipulative-people.com, and also the blog Psychology, Philosophy, and Real Life at counselingresource.com. That's counseling resource with two L's, www.counselingresource.com. And in my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, the international bestseller, and many think the definitive work on manipulative characters, and The Judas Syndrome, my book for the Christian faith community, Character Disturbance, the Phenomenon of Our Age, my in-depth study of all the disturbed characters that are likely to drive you crazy in your relationships, and my first book with my co-author, Kathy Armistead, Dr. Kathy Armistead, How Did We End Up Here? A book that addresses how folks who are either in the midst of or have come to the end of a toxic relationship are wondering how it all happened and are trying to ensure that it doesn't happen again, and are also wondering how we got here as a society, as a culture. So if you have a chance, look up my work, either on the blogs or through the books. You can download them as Kindle apps or other ebook formats. In Sheep's Clothing is even available on audio CD or audio download, audiobook. And I hope you'll avail yourself of that work, and I hope you'll tune in to Character Matters, too, each week at this same time, when we talk about character issues. We talk about problem relationships, what to do about them, how to handle them. And this week on my blog, I've been talking about the fourth commandment of character development, the fourth of 10 commandments that my patients over the years and my other clinical experience and research has taught me must be observed and embraced if people are to have sound character. And number 4 has to do with revering the truth. And so I posted the first of a series of articles on that commandment just this past Friday. And I invite you to mosey on over to manipulative-people.com and browse through the article. You'll find it informative, I hope, and interesting, and apropos to the problems that we're having today. And if you want to join the conversation today, if you have a question you want to ask me, a situation you want to share, perhaps you've read something on the blog, or perhaps you've read one of my books, maybe you have a comment or two you want to add, or just something you'd like to share that you think folks would benefit from listening to, or maybe you just want to chat about something that is of interest to you, give us a call here at ucy.tv at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I'll be happy to take your call. As I mentioned just a moment ago, I began a new short series on what I call the fourth commandment of sound character development that has to do with revering the truth. What does it mean to revere something anyway? To hold it in high regard. To consider, to really be mindful of, to really consider its importance, its value. And I'm afraid that what's happened to us in the past several years is that the truth seems to have little value anymore. I make the point in all my training workshops that disturbed characters of all types, people with impaired character, serious character defects, are always playing fast and loose with the truth. Some have raised lying to an art form. And by that I mean they're so clever about the way they go about lying. They might even be able to lie by saying a series of factually true, 100% true things. But putting those things together in such a way and leaving other information selectively out, putting that information together in such a way that it casts an impression or leaves the listener with an impression that the manipulator knows is false. So good manipulators can lie even by saying true things. Disturbed characters of various types, unfortunately, have raised lying to an art form. They play fast and loose with the truth all the time. They have no real regard for the truth. Some, in fact, disdain the truth. There are those individuals who are truly at war with the truth. They want reality to be as they say it is, not as it is. And so they twist and turn and distort the truth. And if ever there was a perfect example of that, if ever there were many egregious examples of that, it would be what goes on most of the time in our political campaigns, sadly, but truly. And of course, this campaign is no exception. And it really is disconcerting. It's downright depressing to me. Because I know that when I hear anything, even on the news outlets, even from supposed news sources, objective guardians of the truth, that's what they're supposed to be. I know so many times that I'm getting such biased information, such half-truths, such distorted, such colored information, such information that has been subject to what we call these days spin. You know, it's all in the framing. It's all in how something is presented. It's all in the carefully selected words we choose. All to manage impressions, all to mislead and otherwise manipulate the listener. It's like watching one of the commercials on TV for some pharmaceutical product, or for some special TV offer that you could only get because it's not available. The product's so darn good, it's not available in stores. We're constantly spinning, and we're so used to it among our leadership. We're so used to that we don't expect anything more, which is a real tragedy as far as I'm concerned. It's more than a tragedy. You know, these days, these times are truly dangerous, very dangerous. Our technology has evolved to the point where some really horrible things could happen at the hands of just one or two deranged individuals. And they don't even have to be deranged. They just have to be of a particular mindset, a dominance-seeking mindset, like is present in so many of these terror groups, where they want to impose their way of doing things on everyone else. And we have the technology, unfortunately, that in the wrong hands, great damage could be done. And we're already seeing that. We saw it very vividly years ago on September 11th, 2001. It's hard to imagine that very shortly it will be 15 years for that event. And although the song that plays at the beginning of our program and at the end was not written at all for 9/11, that's when it became popular, because a regional ABC television affiliate paired it with a video montage of the tragic events and sent that video out to affiliates. And it got picked up, and then the song got exposure. But we had a vivid example of what just a couple of individuals, 3 individuals on one plane, 2 individuals on another plane, two individuals yet on another plane, 3 planes, going to be a 3-pronged attack. Not just both towers of the World Trade Center, but either the White House or the Pentagon. In the end, the Pentagon was chosen. And then another target that we can't be 100% sure of might have been the White House, that fortunately was not hit, because some brave souls, some very brave souls, were willing to sacrifice their own lives to bring down what would have been an instrument of greater death. So we have technology, and we have instruments that people can use in any way they wish to do great harm. And we will not rid ourselves of this scourge by bombing the heck out of folks, by creating civilian casualties left and right. We will not succeed in preserving our freedoms. Especially, we will not succeed in preserving our freedoms by simply trying to ban all weaponry. Folks don't get that one at all. There's another aspect of spin that just boggles my mind. Even folks debating right now, because of the terrible, terrible occurrence at the Pulse nightclub in Florida. Truly tragic. But I'm afraid that these kinds of things are going to be more and more commonplace, because we live in an age. We live in an age where there is a certain mindset among certain folks that is truly deadly. And one of the great principles in psychology that has spawned a revolution of sorts in the last several years that we call the cognitive behavioral revolution has come about with the realization that the way people think, the attitudes they hold, the core beliefs that they hold dear, those beliefs and attitudes influence strongly their behavior. So our task really is to change minds and hearts, one at a time. Changing minds first, challenging these twisted ways of thinking. The same is true when someone has a character disturbance. This is exactly what we do in therapy. We challenge the attitudes and the thinking patterns and the beliefs that create all the problems. That's what we do. And among the very biggest problems, perhaps the biggest, is this utter disregard for the truth that people seem to have these days. The truth takes a back seat to the individual agendas of folks. They will lie, cheat, steal, do whatever they can to advance their agendas. The truth really doesn't matter. And here's the thing about lying. It always comes with a cost. It always comes with a cost. In the article that I posted on Friday on my manipulative-people.com blog, I quoted the famous story from an Aesop's fable. You know, Abraham Lincoln was credited with saying, "Honesty is the best policy." But that was not an Abraham Lincoln saying. As a matter of fact, several folks before him quoted it, and the quote comes from an Aesop's fable about the god Mercury and a woodsman who had lost an axe and was honest with Mercury about the particular piece that he lost. And because he was honest, he was rewarded. That's the fable. That's the story. And there was another character in the story who wasn't so honest. And because of the dishonesty, that character was punished. And the moral of the story is that honesty ultimately pays. It ultimately pays. It's the best policy. There's always a cost to lying. And that goes to, by the way, most especially for those most insidious lies that we tell ourselves, the fooling ourselves that we do, and that so many of us do so often. There's always a cost. It always hurts us in the end. whatever we think we save, whatever immediate gain we think we get, or whatever pain we think we avoid by being less than truthful, there's always a cost. In the end, we lose. We don't just lose personally. There's a social cost. Everything has an impact. A perfect example. The healthcare reform pushed through many years ago. Now, the justification for pushing it through in the manner that it was put through was that there would be so much stalling and there would be so much debate and so much watering down of things that to get anything decent through, it had to be passed the way it was passed. There was some truth to that. But there's always a cost. There's always a cost to doing things a little tricky. But the real problem with dishonesty was the claims that were made on the front end to secure it. Claims that at the time everyone knew could not be reliably and fully backed up. But to sell it, the advocates felt they needed to make those claims. And now we're paying the price. And some folks are paying a dear price at that. And next year, or next calendar cycle, depending on whether or not people's plans follow the calendar year, there'll be increases once again in the double digits, the likes of which people haven't seen in a long time. This wasn't supposed to happen. Everybody knew, basically, that it would. Too much lying. Too much distorting. Too much spinning. Everyone does it. And it's hurt us drastically. In relationships, it's the biggest threat to the solidity of the relationships. You know, when there's been a breach of trust in a marriage or any intimate relationship, it takes so much to try and repair the damage. Once trust has been broken, once the lies have reared their ugly heads, once the truth is out, and partners in a relationship realize what's really been going on, how they've been done in some way. Once that kind of damage has been done, once the betrayal has happened, it takes a lot to try and repair the damage. And many times it's irreparable. And many times folks who are inclined to lie to start with will tell even more lies to minimize the damage, to try and mitigate the damage. I have this happen all the time, especially folks with various types of behavioral impulse control problems like gambling, like drug or alcohol addiction, sexual addictions, whatever the case may be. And inevitably, relationship partners tell me that the biggest damage was the lie. The biggest damage was not really knowing the character of the person that they hooked up with or married until it was too late. And then to be deceived again, perhaps, by a person who was caught and then tried to mitigate the damage with more lies, only pouring salt on the wound. It was the lies that really did most of the damage. That was what's so hard to overcome, that breach of trust. Trust is the foundation of any relationship, including, by the way, therapeutic relationships. Which is why, as a therapist, long ago, I realized that if I were ever going to help my clients who increasingly were struggling with character-related issues, if I were ever really going to help them, I would have to be honest with them about the nature of their problems. And the trust that comes from that is the very foundation of a workable relationship, of a working relationship, to help a person change. It's just really mind-boggling to me how, for many years, mental health professionals of one persuasion or another were not willing to address character issues head on, despite the problem that they have become these days. So I promised myself early on that if I were going to be working with the population that I've been working with, that I would, right from the get-go, lay all cards on the table and confront the character issues head on. Now, I got to tell you, folks don't always like that right off the bat. They don't always, it is not a feel-good experience to have someone negatively appraise one's character. You have to do that pretty delicately. Even if you're calling attention to some fairly negative character traits, you still have to do that lovingly and caringly. People have to know, basically, that in calling out the issues, that you only mean to get those issues on the table so that they can be dealt with. That you're not trying to disparage the person, unduly condemn the person, or beat up on the person, but rather get out on the table without denial, without any candy coating, to get out onto the table exactly what's going on. And that, even though it doesn't always feel good, and even though folks aren't always in a frame of mind to accept it gladly at first, laying those cards out on the table, calling things out so fairly, accurately, and unreservedly from the get-go, doing that is the very foundation of a trusting relationship. At least the person knows that you're honest, that you're honest because you haven't candy-coated, because you haven't spun, because you've spoken directly to the issues that need attention. And that's the beginning of trust. So I learned that early on. I also learned that there are these individuals with various types of character disturbances who are so used to lying so much and so often in so many different ways that it's automatic for them. It's not that they don't know they're doing it. They know full well they're doing it. But they do it without thinking, and they do it so automatically. They do it so unreservedly. And it's really, really taxing work to deal with individuals who lack the willingness, some even lack the capacity to be fully honest with another human being, and especially to be honest with themselves. They've been so used to fooling themselves, so used to kidding themselves. And I do know this. Perhaps there's someone out there in the listening audience that could attest to this. I do know this, that when people decide to turn their lives around, and I've witnessed hundreds of people do this, I've witnessed hundreds of people with significant character-related problems finally turn things around and really start to lead meaningful, productive, responsible lives, significant lives. I've seen them do that. And universally, the folks who do that have had what they call in the 12-step groups this honest self-reckoning, this cutting the crap. No more BS, just the truth. The whole truth, nothing but the truth. It's when they reckoned honestly with their shortcomings and decided to get to work to address them that everything got better, that they started to get better, that the relationships began to heal, became more healthy. I've seen this universally, so I know it to be true. As I mentioned a moment ago, maybe somebody out there has a validation of that. Or maybe somebody just wants to give a call, say hello, share something, ask a question or two. If so, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I'll be happy to take your call. Well, I also want to mention that the reason that I've been writing on the blog at manipulative-people.com, the reason I've been writing on these 10 commandments of character is that following the success of my first book with Dr. Kathy Armistead, How Did We End Up Here? Following the success of that, Dr. Armistead and I have another book in the works called, tentatively, The 10 Commandments of Character, How to Lead a Significant Life. And it is a more in-depth look into these 10 life lessons that my experience has taught me folks must master and embrace if they are to lead lives of integrity and responsibility. And these commandments are not just the commandments we need to be sure that our children observe so that they enter adulthood as decent, responsible human beings, but also they are the same commandments that individuals who are already in adulthood but who have made a mess of things and who have lost their way, so to speak, and lost any integrity of character, and now are of a frame of mind where they want to gain it back or or build the kind of character that they can live with or that they could rightfully be proud of, not vainly proud of, but rightfully be respectful of. These are the same commandments that they have to obey, embrace, follow, and master these lessons. So I'm talking about them in the blog articles posted on manipulative-people.com every Friday. And last Friday was no exception. It was the first in what will be a series of articles on commandment number 4 for revering the truth. Now, as I mentioned in the article on Friday, being truthful does not mean that you are obliged to say every little factually true thing that you know to say or that you honestly believe, even when there would be no purpose but to hurt someone's feelings. For example, you might think somebody looks absolutely hideous in a particular getup. You may think they look absolutely ridiculous, and you're entitled to your opinion. Now, are you obliged to share that opinion? Are you obliged to say exactly how you honestly feel? If it would serve no constructive purpose except to embarrass the person or to hurt the person in some way? No, absolutely not. No, absolutely not. The same is true, by the way, for individuals who have really damaged their relationship by doing some horrible things and then being found out. Sometimes the brutal details, every little thing, sometimes the brutal details are nothing but more pain for the person who has already been victimized by the very loss of their ability to trust their partner. They've already suffered a huge gaping emotional wound in the fact that they can no longer have the confidence in their relationship and in their partner that they once did. This is a serious blow. So sometimes the dirty little details of somebody's misdeeds only serve to pour salt, dirt, sand on the wound. And this is unnecessary. It would suffice to say, for the wrongdoer, it would suffice to say that there's more even that you don't know about, that it's really bad. And if in fact concealing the information, however, would hurt, do damage. For example, let's say that there's been a breach of trust that involves finances, where there are huge debts incurred, and you're not telling the whole story, so the person doesn't really know how bad it is and what consequences could be coming with respect to, say, losing a home, an IRS audit, fines, possible civil action, whatever the case may be. If not providing all the information would do even further damage, then yes, you're obliged to fess up fully, to give the person a fighting chance. I see we have a call coming in. I'm going to go ahead and take it. Hello, and welcome to Character Matters. Hello? Well, I'm not sure whether we had a failed call or not. We'll see if somebody wants to call back in. We'll try and patch it through again. For some reason, the call did not take. But as I was saying, you don't always have to share every bit of information if it would only hurt. But you are obliged to be fully truthful if it would do damage not to be fully truthful. And that's the way I see it with respect to our political campaign and the shenanigans going on there. Unfortunately, on both sides of the political spectrum, there is enough lying, spinning, twisting, distorting going on all the time. And it is taken so for granted these days. We assume basically that we're going to get this kind of behavior. I see we got the caller trying to get in again, so let's try and take the call. Hello and welcome to Character Matters.
Yes. Hello. Good evening, Dr. Simon.
Hi.
Hello. I have a question for you. I've been listening to your program, and it's very, very good. And I do know people that, as you're talking about, have changed, like you said, when all the information is presented to them. And also they basically, I guess, get sick and tired of their own old ways and have their proverbial come to Jesus moment. Have really hit the bottom. I have a question for you, though. Are some of these individuals so resistant to the truth, there's actually never getting through to them, or is there different techniques in approaching them? Because basically, a lot of them, and I like to say this, is we keep passing on generational sin. And I see that as why our society is the way that it is. We've passed it on, the commercialism, et cetera, the lying, and just so many things. And it gets bigger. It doesn't get smaller. And I was just wondering if there are different ways of approaching individuals like this.
Are you talking about, I'm not sure I understand the question. Are you talking about confronting individuals in a healthy and loving way who have not yet honestly reckoned with the truth? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for the question. That is the art of benign confrontation. And in the training workshops I've been doing around the country, this is what I've been training therapists who work with character impaired people to do. You know, most therapists were trained to be completely non-judgmental. In other words, we don't make judgments about the person or their character or their worth or their value, or we don't make judgments about their own value system. This was the theory for a long, long time. So when somebody came to talk to you, even if their problems had to do with their very approach to life and their very corrupt value system and their distorted belief system, you didn't confront this. You dealt with their feelings. You let them get those feelings out. You helped them process, but you didn't judge. Well, we live in an age where, as you say, these generational issues are passed down. These character impairments are passed down, and people come totally unprepared to lead a responsible, principle-driven life. And so they get themselves into horrible trouble, and then finally, hopefully, maybe one day have that, as you put it, come to Jesus moment. And really, it takes a certain kind of what I call benign, loving confrontation to call out the very character issues that need to be addressed. And sometimes that means like calling out someone's ego inflation or calling out their lack of regard for others or calling out the lack of moral code that they've established. Some folks were raised in such permissive environments that they basically have adopted the philosophy that, you know, whatever turns them on, whatever gives them pleasure is okay. And so long as they're not hurting anybody else, or so long as they're not intentionally hurting anybody else, whatever they want to do is just fine.
You know, the other thing I noticed, Dr. Simon, is that they actually think that their way is right. And they've learned this, that the corrupt way is a correct way. The way that we're living in society, everybody thinks that is the way that we're supposed to live. And going back how many years, we weren't brought up that way. It was different. And now we've got such a twisted society.
Yeah.
The ones that are coming up, they don't know anything different.
Yeah, we did have a core of commonly shared values that most people could agree upon.
Right.
That was one of the great lessons from my youth, and I'm not going to say how old I am, but you know, I've been around. So I mean, I can remember when it didn't matter whose home I was in or what relative I was visiting. I can remember that the rules I knew would be the same, regardless of where I was. And I also knew that the consequences would be the same. And I also believed that my parents would endorse any other adult's view on the same thing because those values were so universally shared. That's not true today.
That's correct.
Yeah. Well,
and I see that's where a problem is with a lot of them. They think what it is today is actually the truth. So the ones in the new generation are actually believing a lie.
Yeah. So it is a specialized art, this art that I call benign confrontation. It is judgmental, but it's judgment with an open heart and with a helping heart, wanting someone to get their life back on track. And if they know that, and they know that that's all you mean, that you mean well, and you're trying to coach them to health, they usually play along. So, yeah.
Well, I hope it all works.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the call.
You're welcome. Thank you, Doctor.
Take care.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Well, here we are almost at the close of the hour. And once again, I want to say we're having a big weekend next weekend. You're going to be hearing our theme song play on the way out here very shortly. And as you do, think about the message in the song. America is a great place because of the freedoms we enjoy, but its greatness has never resided in its military might or its economic power. Its greatness has always resided in the people of good character who honor and treasure her best ideals and upon whom the very survival of freedom depends. And that's the message of this song. One will be playing in its entirety next week. So tune in once again for another edition of Character Matters. I'm Dr. George Simon. Thanks for tuning in tonight. I'll see you next week at 7 p.m. Eastern for another edition of Character Matters. Take care.